Well, I'll just kick it off and welcome everyone to our info session for our upcoming Life Science Cares Thanksgiving food drive. It's really great to have you all on the call today. I hope you're able to kind of learn more about this really pressing issue of food insecurity in San Diego, learn about one of Life Science Care's nonprofit partners, PlusBox, and all the good work that they're doing to address this really critical issue, and kind of get excited and fired up for your food drive you're holding in your office. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Wes. You should be able to share your screen if you have a presentation, and we're looking forward to learning more from you. And feel free, everyone, to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Hey, everybody, I'm Wes. Let me grab my sweet slide deck real quick. All right, can everybody see that?
Yeah, we can.
Sweet. Okay, cool. Yeah, so like I said, I'm Wes. I am the founder and executive director at PlusBox. I have a brief little presentation through a sort of an overview of food insecurity in County. Then a little sort of high level view of what PlusBox has been doing to try to address that, and sort of what our vision for the next few years is in terms of, you know, where we intend to take this nonprofit organization to continue to try to meet the level of need that exists in our community and beyond. And then I'll close it out by sharing a little bit about Life Science Cares food drive means to us and why it's important, and then I'll answer any questions. And that's my plan. So off we go, I suppose. So basically, in San Diego County, in the pandemic, food insecurity sort of rocketed to really about 1 in 3 individuals. And since then, it's come back down a bit. But right now, even today, 1 in 4 people in San Diego County experience food insecurity. And of those, about 200,000 of them are children, which is not great. Even in addition to that, and when you think about like all the different, you know, food resources that are available, and I'm going to get into this in a little detail in a second just to share some more, but our best estimate is that up to 30% of those food insecure folks are unable to even access the resources that are available to them for one reason or another. And there's a bunch of different reasons why that's the case. But the way the system is set up is for some people just not helpful. The other thing that's important to us in thinking about food insecurity in San Diego County specifically, even though we live in an agriculture-rich area like San Diego, is that only about 1/3 of food assistance programs provide folks with fresh produce, right? So fresh, healthy foods. And so I'm going to tell you why all that's super important, but that's sort of the state of food insecurity at the moment in San Diego County. There's an organization that does a lot of really good research called the San Diego Hunger Coalition. And I think one of the most interesting data points they have about food insecurity is sort of their research on how many meals per month it would take for everyone in San Diego to be whole, right? To have enough food every day to meet their basic nutritional needs. And it is last I checked, 13.8 million meals per month, like not per year, but like per month. So we're talking about something that is pretty acute, and maybe you don't see it every day, but it's there. And then, so what I thought I'd do is now that, you know, you think about like food insecurity, but like what is that? And I think it's important to define what we're talking about. And so food insecurity is one of those terms that gets thrown around in like academic nonprofit spaces, like everyone's supposed to know exactly what that means, but like let me share with you a couple ideas so you kind of understand where we're coming from. So the academic definition of food insecurity is the condition of not having access to sufficient food or food of an adequate quality to meet one's basic needs. Again, fairly academic. At PlusBox, we often think of it in terms of an inability for to provide 3 healthy meals per day for themselves or their family members, which also, as a parent sounds very stressful and just nothing that I would ever want to have to deal with. But I think if you really want to define what food insecurity means, then you have to ask people who aren't necessarily going to raise their hand and identify as food insecure. But when we talk to them through our program, we're told things like this. Food insecurity, and this is from a mother of 3 kids in a Carlsbad school district that we support, is being so in need of food for your 3 kids because rent and other bills are already so unaffordable that you're never sure how you're going to feed them from day to day. So again, like as a parent, that just terrifies me. And so this is what we're trying to work on, is how do we as a nonprofit organization support these families who are struggling in such a way that like they're not even sure how they're going to feed their kids. And so like what I think the other thing that's important about defining food insecurity is like, what does that mean, right? Like, okay, so an inability to adequately nourish your kids on a daily basis or what have you, like what does that actually mean? So what for food insecure individuals, they are much more likely to suffer from poor health and chronic illness, including like diabetes, heart disease, like all the things. For the kids, it leads to delayed development, academic outcomes. Food insecure kids in schools are more likely to have behavior issues. They're more likely to be held back in grades, lower test scores, attendance issues, et cetera, et cetera. You think about that definition of food insecurity, the other thing that it does that we often don't think about is it increases household stress when those parents are forced to make really hard choices between like providing their kids with healthy food and paying for other essential expenses like their rent or healthcare or utility bills or whatever the case may be. And that's all to say that this is threatening human dignity. And this isn't in a faraway place. These are our neighbors in our community here in San Diego. So from a PlusBox perspective, when we think about food insecurity, we're thinking about all those different things and how we can try to solve those. So PlusBox is a local nonprofit organization that is collaborating with local communities to build a healthier food assistance system that provides every kid the opportunity to open a box of fresh, healthy food. And that's our vision for what we're trying to do. How we do that, I will share. So we were founded back in April of 2020. We're not that old. We started during the pandemic. And we were founded by, we were founded by a chef, a friend of mine, and my background is in education technology. And we came together to try to figure out how we could address the skyrocketing food insecurity during the pandemic. And so we kind of put our 2 points of expertise together and came up with this idea where at the time schools were closed, but they were still distributing school lunches to the kids who qualified for free and reduced lunch. And so we came up with this concept where essentially we could fill boxes with fresh, healthy, nutritious food and partner with these schools to show up on the same day they were doing lunch distributions and hand out extra healthy food to those households, not just for the students, but enough for the entire household. Our take was that if those families were coming to that lunch distribution, that was a signal that those kids were likely going home, not just the kids being food insecure, but they're likely going home to food insecure households. So we wanted to make sure that we were putting enough food in the box to cover the whole household. We are laser focused on nutrition with an emphasis on fresh produce. We designed the program to meet children and families where they are. So we didn't try to create our own food drives or make people come to us. We tried to look for opportunities where we could go to them. And my background being in the education space, kind of had a sense that schools had all the right infrastructure for us to be able to do that. They have the ability to communicate easily with parents. They have the ability to identify which students and families could benefit from this type of support. And generally they have big old parking lots that you can set up shop in and do, all kinds of distributions and stuff. And the last thing we thought of when we started creating PlusBox was, where should we be doing this? Now, we were all based in North County, so it's a little bit out of convenience, but what we're trying to do is fill gaps in North County communities where other food assistance programs weren't operating for one reason or another. I mean, some of it is just, perception, right? Like everybody just figures North County's all well and good, but the fact of the matter is there's a number of communities right around here that can benefit from this support. So a little like what our program has done in our 3 years of existence. So through September 30th of this year, we have distributed 60,000 plus of those boxes. And within those boxes, we've distributed over 707,000 pounds of healthy food, which comes out to about 587,000 and change healthy meals to households who are unable to access that type of food that's critical for health and wellness. School year in particular, we are now working with 14 different schools across North County and supporting about 780 families. All that comes out to PlusBox providing about 6,900 healthy meals per week. And I'll talk to you about how our program works in just a second. But we do this with a handful of partners. We get food from a lot of different sources, from Feeding San Diego. There's a nonprofit that does a lot of food rescue work called Produce Good. We work with a group called the Smart Food Foundation, and they are able to provide us with really nice 2-pound bags of rice, beans, rolled oats, some of the things that I'm sure are on the food drive list that Charlotte has so nicely set up for us. We work with the San Diego Food Bank. We work with a local farm called Hukama Produce. We started a program a couple years ago called the Local Greens Project, where we purposely started directing our food budget towards local growers, which allowed us to do a couple of really cool things. One is provide these food insecure families with access to like the freshest, like most nutrient rich local produce that we find. And these are families that typically they're likely not going to the farmer's market on the weekends. So access to this type of produce is super important. And then we work with a group called the Farm to Institution Center to sort of broaden our network of local growers that we interact and engage with. So all that being said, what I'd like to share with you is, seeing as how we are an earlier stage nonprofit organization, 3 years really built a program into communities that need our support. And ultimately what PlusBox is doing is partnering with local farms, food rescue organizations, and community schools, neighborhood schools, to distribute boxes of fresh, healthy, nutrient-rich food to food insecure families on a weekly basis. And the reason that we do all that and kind of where we see this going is we think that PlusBox can be an organization that starts to drive a healthier food assistance system. And what I mean by that is you think about food support, food assistance programs and things like that. There's a couple of things that are are guiding our work that are a little unique and a little different, I think, than what some of your more typical like food assistance programs might be thinking about. And so one of those things is a laser sort of focus on healthy food with an emphasis on fresh produce. The other is like thinking about how people access food assistance programs, the barriers that we often put in front of people to gain access to these types of programs and how we can make that easier for folks. We're also very focused on the idea of dependable outcomes. The idea being that like if we are focused on healthy food, then we should be thinking about health-based outcomes. And even though I just showed you a slide about, these giant output numbers that we've had over the last 3 years, like we are trying to focus on outcomes versus, just being incentivized to push volume. And then we recognize that there is an obvious connection between food insecurity, a vibrant local food system, and sustainability, environmental sustainability. And so we are trying to do our part from that perspective as well. So on the healthy food front, one of the things that is important is thinking about the types of food we're actually distributing. And while we work with all of the food banks and things like that, and they're super cool, and they have the ability to do things at a scale that we can't yet get to because we're a smaller sort of startup organization. What we are trying to think about is, what types of foods food insecure folks could most benefit from. And from our perspective, that is fresh food, fruits and vegetables. And so we very much avoid what you might call your typical food drive items that can contribute to health inequities among food insecure individuals. So these are like, your higher sodium, like, more processed foods, obviously things that are shelf stable, which makes life easier if you're doing food distributions. But for us, like, the idea of working with fresh food, while a little more complicated because it is obviously perishable, is much more important to driving the types of outcomes that we want to drive. The other thing I mentioned is expanded access. And we're doing a couple of things to sort of make sure that parents seeking food assistance can do so easily enough. And so one of the things is we lean on our school partners to help us understand the need in their communities and the families that most benefit from participating in the PlusBox program. Because of that, we don't do any we don't make people apply to be a part of our program. We don't feel like that type of justification is necessary, especially when you consider the fact that educators, in my experience, typically have a very good sense of their communities and can help us identify those families and determine, at what level of support we need for each school site. The other thing that we're working on, you see the little telephone pictures up there, is we're actually piloting a proprietary software application we call PlusBox Connect. And basically what we're trying to figure out with the pilot project in one of our schools is, can we actually make it even easier for households to opt into food support by pushing a very basic mobile optimized application through existing school channels. So it's coming from your child's school, a very trusted source, and allowing folks to opt in to food assistance programs with no questions asked. Like literally one question: what's your phone number? That's all we're asking. Now, the interesting thing on the back end of that is, like, we are required to collect certain bits of information about the population that we're serving, primarily for our stakeholders, our funders, our board. We're partly USDA funded, and they like to know what's going on. So basically what we've done is created a data integration with the school's data system, and we're using the parent's phone number as a unique identifier to be able to pull in all of the basic information that you would normally collect on an intake form. But we're doing it in the background because when you enroll your kid in school, you have to tell them all that stuff already. So there's no point in us, requiring people to fill out forms or do things that they might not be comfortable with when we can certainly just grab that information elsewhere and allow people to some higher level of dignity to be able to just click a button and say like, yeah, I could use that support, the end. We are thinking about these dependable outcomes in a couple of terms. One is consistent access to healthy food. So we work on a weekly distribution cycle. We distribute healthy food every single week during the school year and most weeks during the summer. The last couple of years, we've done food distributions in 49 of the 52 weeks of the year. And the reason we do that is because if we are thinking more about helping people improve health, wellness, academic outcomes, then it doesn't do any good to sporadically distribute that healthy food. It's got to be something that they can have access to on a regular, consistent basis if we're going to do that, if we're going to drive the outcomes we want to drive. On a related note, the way that we're thinking about growing this program over the next few years, and this is what the map alludes to, is not necessarily just thinking about like how many different schools can we work with, but where should those schools be and how should we think about that? And so there is actually a data-driven index called the Healthy Places Index that considers a whole bunch of different social determinants of health to identify, the least and most healthy places in California. And so this is a little screenshot of the San Diego area and or at least North County. And so we are committed to growing this program in terms of supporting the least healthy communities in North County and then in San Diego and beyond. But those are the blue ones. The light and dark blue ones are considered the least healthy communities. So we already work in Oceanside. We work in Vista, we work in some of those communities, but we'll be looking to expand based on how we can drive those health outcomes in those least healthy communities. And then our last sort of guiding principle is being climate smart. And so we do a couple things in this arena. One I mentioned, our local green is local growers. We think it's important as a nonprofit to not only think about the nutritional value of the food that farmers grow, but the economic value, the financial value to them. So a lot of nonprofits will distribute locally grown produce, but it's typically like excess food that was donated or rescued from a farmer's market that the farmer couldn't sell. And so we're taking sort of an intentional, sort of different approach, working with farmers to figure out how we can actually pay them for the food that we're growing. So we have a line item in our budget that allows us to purchase food, and we are directing that budget to local farms to the extent possible. And so I always think about, I never know who to attribute this saying to, but basically, it's one of those things where, I think the saying goes, don't tell me what you care about, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you care about. And so when we say that, this is something we care about, like we are allocating budget to make sure that we can actually do this. The other thing is we work with food rescue organizations, including Feeding San Diego, Produce Good, the ones I mentioned before. And so we serve as a distribution mechanism for those rescue organizations. So they do a lot of the legwork in terms of going around and making sure that edible food doesn't make its way into a landfill, and they bring it to us, and we're able to take it the last mile and make sure that edible food, makes it into the household of somebody who can definitely benefit from it. So we, as a collaboration with food rescue organizations, we have diverted thousands and thousands of pounds of edible food from the landfill to the plates of children and families who need that food. Okay, so that's PlusBox. That's what we do. That's what we care about. That's the outcomes we're trying to drive, and how we're trying to thoughtfully grow this organization. So in terms of what we're all here to talk about, we've done a few Life Cares food drives in the past. They're always super helpful, but I want to share with you how important they are to us and really encourage you guys to participate as much as you can. So over the last couple of years, Life Science Cares food drives have donated enough food for approximately 1,500 healthy meals. And that's just simply what has come in through different companies doing these food drives over Thanksgiving and the holidays in the past. The other thing that's really important to us as a earlier stage nonprofit with limited resources is the fair market value of that food, what we would otherwise have to go essentially spend to put that into our boxes, is over $3,000, which for us is not nothing. And so again, like, to the extent you guys can participate in this food drive with us, like, it not only helps the individuals and families that we are supporting, but it certainly helps us as a limited resource nonprofit. And all in all, I think the most important part is that amount of food that has been donated through Life Science Cares food drives has supported more than 155 families. So again, like, this is real impact, not only on the community, but on us as a nonprofit trying to do this work. So I really do encourage you to participate. It's super helpful to us, and tell all your coworkers and friends to get on it. It'll be great. If anything I've said today is compelling in any way to you, or you're passionate about food and nutrition insecurity, we do have other opportunities for support for you to consider in addition to doing the food drive through Life Science Cares. One is we do a lot of volunteer opportunity. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities. We do 4 or 5 different volunteer shifts every week. So we're always looking for folks to come out and help us essentially like pack up the boxes full of fresh, healthy food and get it ready for distribution. As I mentioned, we are a younger organization, so we're still building out our board of directors and board of advisors. So if board service is something you see in your future, we're trying to get some more folks on to help us guide this thing into the future. And if that maybe board service is a little much, but you still have professional expertise you would like to lend, we need help in most professional areas. So if you're a legal person, a finance person, et cetera, and have a few hours a week to volunteer to provide guidance or support, we would love it. So that's kind of where we are in terms of how you can help us out if you want to go above and beyond the food drive. But I think that's my spiel.
Great. Thank you so much, Wes. That was really informative, and I'm glad we got to hear from that. And just for everyone's reference, we do have 2 volunteer shifts, like Wes mentioned, for the food sorting and pack out. We have 2 booked right now for Life Science Cares, our community. I just put them in the chat for November 14th and 15th. So, if you are compelled to volunteer, we've got 2 shifts reserved, so feel free to check those out. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute.